little bit of detail of what TMS is. Okay, so I'll probably draw a diagram to show you what TMS is. What are the components that we have in the backend that works for TMS? That might help you to clear your doubts how things work in TMS. Okay, so what is TMS? So this was a product that was launched by Tenberg as a company before Cisco acquired Tenberg. This product was in place. It is nothing but it's an exe file. Right? It's an exe file that you install on top of Windows Server. For TMS to work, you require to have a Windows Server in place. Okay, so it's not a complete package that you get from Cisco when you buy TMS. You need to have a Windows Server installed. Based on what version of TMS you want, you'll have a respective version requirement of your Windows Server also. It could be 2016, 2019, 2012. If you have older versions of TMS, or you want to go for an older version of TMS, you may have an older version of Windows Server also. So we have to check out the install guide to see what Windows is required. You cannot have maybe a 2012 server with the very latest version of TMS. It may or may not work. So you have to check out your install guide, whichever TMS you want to install. For example, I want to install TMS 15.13. I'll just open up the install guide, check out the requirement. Since it's a third-party environment, we have a Windows environment. We have to deploy this exe file on. By exe file I mean TMS. You have to make sure you follow the prerequisite. And whenever you perform upgrade from a lower version or to a higher version, or you are setting up a new deployment, you have to follow the deployment guide completely. You cannot just hit and try and suppose and think that it will work. Okay, so always follow the guide. Just search for Windows, check out what is the Windows requirement we have for this version of TMS. So it says I can install 15.13 with 2019 64-bit, 2016 64-bit, Windows 2012 64-bit, and 2012 64-bit. So this is R2, and this is a standard 2012 64-bit version. Yeah. So when customer perform an upgrade from any lower version, they need to have any one of these Windows installed. Okay. You cannot alter anything in here. You cannot expect, okay, so 2012 is there, 2016 is there, so 2014 will work. It may or may not work. Our exe file has been tested with these versions, and we expect customers to use the same one. If they use a different version of Windows, which is not mentioned here, we won't support it. TMS is a kind of application, or I would say only application that runs on a third-party environment in telepresence. We face a lot of problems that are because of the third-party applications, third-party roles and securities that we have in place. So we have to follow these documents hardcore. Okay, so by heart you have to follow it. You cannot just assume that a different version will work with TMS. Okay, you just stick to what is mentioned in the guide. So consider this is your Windows Server. This is a box. You have to install .NET on this. This exe file uses .NET as a framework. So you need to have .NET installed. That will be the next requirement. So once you verify what version you require for this, search for .NET also. Yeah. Any one of these .NET will work. Now the next problem that comes in, because it's a Windows Server, there is a chance that any Windows update, any changes done by the network team may upgrade or downgrade the version that you install initially. Okay, so today you install TMS, you follow the guide, and now everything is up and running, no issues. After a week, maybe there's a Windows update which is in place that upgraded this 4.8 to 4.9. Your setup may stop right there. Okay, so logs might tell you that okay, this has been done. You probably have to check out the you have to log into the remote desktop. Any troubleshooting that you have to do, you have to get into the remote desktop of the TMS related to installations upgrades. Get into the remote desktop, find out what is the current version of .NET installed. If it is same, you probably have to check the Windows update to see if Windows updates are not causing it. Else, if you see uninstall a program section, so you go to control panel on Windows Server, you go to uninstall a program and find out what version of .NET you have, and if it doesn't match this, ask customer to uninstall and you have to install the same one which is mentioned in there. So that is another prerequisite. It should be there. It should be same what we have in here. Okay, so that's the second thing that we need to do. Then talking about the exe file, we download TMS and we have to install it. Now, before you install this TMS application, we need to have a database installed. You need to have your SQL Server installed prior doing any sort of installation. Before you install your TMS, your Sql Server should be set up. Okay, so what's the role of Sql Server? Basically, it takes care of the database management. TMS as an exe file, it's nothing but an interface that integrates to SQL. It's an APIs and create tables in here. Okay, so for each section of TMS, anything that you have on TMS, so let's go to one of my TMS. So I'm logging to my TMS. If I go to any section, be it my configuration, the list of devices that I have in list here, all of this data that you're seeing, it's getting fetched from the SQL Server. It is the SQL Server. It is the tables where this information is stored. Whenever I click on any of the options, example, I'm going System Navigator, and I'm clicking this, the process which is running here, it's fetching all the data from the tables that are listed inside the SQL Server. The SQL Server is a mandate. Now, when you install TMS, you have to make sure the version of SQL here is matching, because when developers build up the code for this exe file, they will have certain SQL Server already in market. So those codes will be based on the available SQL version. So you have to go with those only. Search for SQL, you'll find these versions. TMS 15.13 will only work with these versions of SQL. Okay, so these are the versions. Further, they may have certain builds, 64-bit, service pack 1, 2, 3. Some people may go for version, maybe same version of 2014, 64-bit, service pack might be 3. Now, it may or may not work. We never know, because there might be some changes to the APIs on SQL version service pack 3. If they do that, we won't guarantee that it will work on it. So that's something they have to take care. They have to make sure they follow the guide, and it should be the same, because we are doing nothing but we are sending APIs from our exe file here to fetch some data from SQL. If the service pack is different, there might be some changes how this new service pack is handling SQL services. Okay, so the API communication between these two may break. It may have certain different maybe table queries, or it could be it could have a different setup which may cause problem. So you have to make sure this also match. So .NET, SQL, Windows version. These three things are mandatory. It should be what we have in the setup. Right? So SQL is nothing but a backend server. Okay. Some of you guys must be doing some coding, working on some projects. You guys know it better. Basically, your database is a backend. This TMS is doing nothing, but it's translating the information. It has a GUI interface, which is solving or which is fulfilling the purpose of TMS as an application. Now, how TMS interacts or how other devices interact to TMS? You need to have IIS in place. So this is a backend. You need to have a front end also. You need to have a front end wherein all the requests, all the incoming requests from endpoints, or if I am trying to access a web page of TMS, I need to have a front end which is taking care of pulling up all the data from it. Okay, I'll make it simpler. If I am accessing my web page of TMS, I'm accessing it like this. IP address followed by TMS. I put this and I get the TMS web page. What will happen if I take off TMS from it? Okay, so it takes me to Internet Information Services, which is nothing but IIS. So your IIS is the front end for all the requests that comes in from outside. When I say outside, it means outside of the Windows environment. Any request comes in, it is the IIS where the request is coming in first. When I say /TMS, I'm instructing IIS to look for this folder inside IIS and help me to redirect to the actual exe that we are using in the backend. Clear? Any doubts on this guy? Any questions? Okay. All right, let me show you IIS as well. If someone has not seen that before, probably I'll just show you what it is, what things do we have in there, what's the role of it. I'm audible to you guys, right? I cannot hear anything.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so I'm logged into my TMS. Let me close down some of the windows. So this is how you're gonna troubleshoot when you work on any TMS case. When customer says my web page doesn't work, you first need to see if your IIS is up. So typing in just the IP address of TMS will land your request to IIS web page. So the page that I showed you earlier, wherein it says in Internet Information Service, you should have that page at least up. And if you search on here, if you just search for this info, Internet IIS, you will see this menu on customer screen also. Okay, so this is nothing but the IIS which is installed on my TMS server. When we set up our TMS, we run the setup file TMS is going to install all the required IS configurations for it to work. Okay, so the request which I showed you earlier, if I type in the TMS address followed by /TMS, request comes in on this server, and this is the folder where the request lands in /TMS. Okay, so if I just click on one of this option, it will take me to your TMS web page. Localhost means it's the IP address of the TMS followed by /TMS, which is the folder we have. So we got the TMS web page up here. Okay, so this is the first troubleshooting step. This is one way to understand if your requests are landing to at least IIS, and from IIS you are able to access the service. If customer says my web page doesn't load up, this could be the first thing you can check. If someone deletes this default website, there is no way you can open TMS web page. Yep. So if you ask customer to just try this and you get to IIS, it means IIS is working. Then you probably have to check if the default website and the respective components which TMS installs during the installation are in place. If those are missing, you'll get an idea. Okay, so this is something on the application side. You probably have to try reinstalling this. We don't do customization on this part. It's not a Cisco product. Windows side, IIS side, we don't customize things for customers. Okay, customer may come up with some sort of customization. They may have some Windows group policies in place, which might alter some of these default settings. If something does not work, we will just ask them to go ahead and reload the TMS application so that TMS can reinstall all of these components again. Okay, so try not get into in complete detail of troubleshooting the IIS side, because we never know, changing one config might corrupt some other things. They may have some different websites created apart from TMS in here. Okay, so try not to play around with it. If you think it's problem with the IIS or the components inside IIS, simply uninstall IIS and reload TMS. When you reload TMS, you'll have your IIS reinstall again, and inside IIS all the components will be there. Right. So similarly, if someone wants to access probably phone book, the phone book would be inside TMS service. Then I think some of the here. So inside TMS, I should have external phone book. Yeah. So if you log into any of your endpoint, if you have handy, you can check the phone book URL of TMS would be IP address /TMS/external/phone book. So all those phone book requests land here, and from here this is a section which further communicates to TMS application, and TMS pulls up the data from the Sql Server in the package. So any doubts on this, guys? If anyone has any question, let me know, as we'll move forward from. All right. So yeah, this was all about how TMS works, what is the front end and what is the backend server, which helps TMS to work. So let's come back to the PPTs and discuss what all things do we have in there. Okay, so Sql, we already discussed this on the whiteboard. Basically, this is where your information would be stored. We only support Microsoft SQL Server. No other database software would be supported by this, because your structured query language is something which have been hard coded on TMS app. It won't work with other available database systems if they have any. Okay, so make sure they have SQL, and Sql version is matching to the available list we have in TMS install guide. So if you guys have worked on Sql before, if you log into your Sql server, there's an app called Sql Management Studio. What this app does is it helps you to log into your Sql server, and you can actually check what all databases we have in there. You can create manual database, or these are the default database that TMS will create when you set up TMS for the first time. Okay, so Tms ng, that is the default name or the default database which TMS will create when you set up the installation. To install TMS, this will be the only database that will get created. All your configurations, all your bookings, all of the phone book records, all of the management, CDRs, everything would be a part of this database file. Everything will be inside tables. You'll have all of that info. So if customer says, I do not see anything, any configurations, everything is gone, you probably have to check what database is in place. Is it a new database they have set up for some reason? Do they have a backup of this? Okay, so TMS, if anything goes down, you're performing upgrades, you're performing any sort of action, the first thing you will always ask customer would be to take a backup of this file. If you have this, you need not to worry about TMS. They may just delete their VM. It won't matter much to us. If they have this file, our life is safe. Okay, because everything is inside this. Rest all is just a setup files. We can reinstall that app on a new VM, map it to the same SQL server, and get things going again. There would be no problem. All the previous configurations, all the future bookings, phone book, everything will be in place. But if you lose this, everything is gone. So make sure whenever you perform upgrades for customers, ask them to take a backup of this. Okay, so it's not like a config file we have on VCS or an xconfig on endpoint that if you lose it, probably you have to do some hard work, spend maybe an hour or so, do the manual configurations. No, it's not like that. Losing this database file or corrupting this database file means you have 10 years of future meetings, you have configuration, you have maybe 1,000 endpoints added to this application, all will be gone, right? So it will be a severity one maybe for a few days for sure. If something goes wrong and your database is corrupted. So any change, any sort of configuration that you recommend customers, you always recommend to take a backup of this file. Okay, just remember this. If you are good with SQL, don't become smart and play around with database. No, we do not support any sort of alteration to our database. SQL database is only managed by our application, and any changes that needs to be done would be done by the application. We don't do any configurations by going into this file. If you do it, it may mess up further configurations. It may not do today, maybe after a few days, it will start some other problem. Okay, so if any changes are required, we find some problems with tables, we raise a case with BU. Okay, we tag do not handle any sort of customization on database end. You guys do topic search often, so you might see some cases wherein some script needs to be run on this database to correct some of the tables, correct some of the old entries that are in place, which is pretty common with TMS. We do not straight away do that ourselves. We first ask customer to send their database. We set up a lab, upload this, try that script, and make sure that it works and it resolves the problem. And then we check with BU if it is safe to try it on customer environment or not. Okay, do not take responsibility of altering the database, because then I can tell you won't get much support from TMS BU on such things if you try things yourself first. Yeah, so something important, something good to know about SQLs, because if you guys are new to this and if you do something, don't say next time that you're not aware of it. Okay, so yeah. SQL Server. So in past, I remember with version 14.x, in old version, we used to provide a small set of file of SQL along with the install itself. So with version 14 or 13, people used to get our SQL, get a free version of SQL built in the exe file of TMS. They could simply install TMS, and TMS used to just install a SQL server on the same Windows server itself. Like here, if I'm installing TMS here, when you run installer or your TMS installer, it will install your SQL server here also, and you can just use TMS on the same server. Most of the customer won't follow this process. They won't have TMS and SQL on the same deployment nowadays. They used to do in past, and from version TMS 14.5, we no longer support this. Okay, we ask customer to arrange their own set of file. It could be a freeware, it could be a full version of SQL, and they can use it. Uh, the one of the important reason why we stopped providing that SQL freeware was because when our installer provides that exe file, or when our installer installs SQL, customer expect us to troubleshoot all SQL related entries, because that's something our application is installed. And it's again a Microsoft product, we don't get into it. That's why Cisco stopped providing that exe file. If customer want to have a freeware, they can do it. They can download a freeware, they can install it, but we are not responsible for any sort of SQL issues. They have to fix it out themselves. Okay, so type of SQL servers, we have something called Express Edition. It's a freeware. You can download SQL files from Microsoft website. It used to be a 4 gig file in past. I mean, when I say 4 gig, it means that's the capacity of the database. Your database could be 4 gig max. If it increased this value, your TMS will stop working, because that's the maximum size it supports. You have to clear down some entries from it, and then it will start working again. Now that freeware edition gives you 10 gig of database size. So any database that is installed on top of it should not increase 10 GB. That is a requirement, or that is the limitation we have on Express Edition. Oh yeah, so this is what I just spoke about. Now it's 10 gig. In past, it used to be 4 gig. TMS database, if we talk about the size of our TMS application database, if you see a database which is around 1 gig, 2 gig, or less than that, consider that to be normal. It's a standard deployment. If the size goes above 4, 5, and it crosses 10 gig, it means either it's a very large deployment where they book thousands of meetings every day, or something is going wrong with the database size, or how that SQL is handling the database is wrong. Okay, so I remember I worked with one of our SQL TMS. So we have TMS in Cisco. If you search for tms.cisco.com, you can do bookings. All the bookings that we do from our Outlook are basically handled by tms.cisco.com. I was handling one of their case, and their database size was around 10, I think 12 GB, or maybe a little bit higher. That's the largest database size I have seen. So if you see any database which is higher than 3 or 4 gigs, it could be an alarm. It could be an alarm for some reason. You probably have to keep an eye on that side as well. Other editions that we have are standard editions. So these are full versions with some features additional on different modes. Here, load balancing is not possible. Here you have standard and edition enterprise available with different size limit and all. So based on customer requirement, they do it. Usually they will have a full version. Very rare customer have Express nowadays. You know, they will have their own SQL administrator. They may not even share access to this. We will be restricted to our TMS side only. But we have tools on TMS to see connectivity and to check what's going wrong with their side. So yeah, that's all about the free and the paid version that we have in SQL. So what version is supported with what version of TMS? Probably check out the TMS install guide. That will give you a better view of it. So we just added this slide just to give you an overview that with new versions coming in, with new version of TMS coming in, we stopped supporting the older versions of TMS, older version of SQL, sorry. Okay, so anything higher than 15.8 probably won't have support for SQL 64-bit or maybe a different one. So when this slide was created, Cisco removed support for 2012. So there's one addition to this. Later on, I think from 15.9 or 15.10, a lot of customers requested to add support for 2012 because this was probably a stable version for most of the customers. That's why they reintroduced support for 2012 now. If you guys have seen the install guide earlier, you might have seen support for SQL 2012 even for the new version. I think that was one of the feature requests. Yeah. So here, one of the feature requests raised by some of the customers. So they reintroduced this support for 2012 later on based on customer requirement. So maintenance plan. So on TMS side, there is no such maintenance plan as such. So it's on the database side. Most of the customer will have their DB admins who will be taking care of the SQL backups. They might do periodic backups, maybe regular backups every night, maybe hourly backup based on how much important that database is for them. They will do that. So we can always ask them. So whenever you perform upgrade, cross check if they have a backup of it. They will probably say, I have my admin who has taken backup from last night. When they say this statement, it means a backup has been taken last night. And since last night, if someone has done a booking from yesterday night 12 o'clock, and if right now it's afternoon time, between those 12 hours, any of the bookings, any of the changes, any of the modifications done on TMS side would not be saved. Okay, so backup is 12 hours old. Any changes after that would not be saved. So if you make any changes to the setup file, if anything goes wrong, your database got corrupted, backup would be 12 hours old. So those 12 hours of information would not be there. These are the kind of alarms or the checklist you have to present to your customer before you perform upgrades on TMS. Right? So something that will keep your life easy, I would say, because if things goes wrong after this, at least you have something to back you up on this side. Right? Otherwise, customer will keep yelling, this has gone, that is not there. So they have to take the risk to proceed ahead from that point. But yeah, these are small things you have to keep in mind that will be helpful. Okay, so Exchange side. So we won't get more in detail on the Exchange side. We have already spent a lot of time on SQL and already. Basically, Exchange has certain roles, certain features in place, which takes care of certain services in place. So mail server, it holds the mailboxes, all the mailboxes that we have. So the bookings that we will do in TMS are based on something called mailbox. Okay, so when we do a booking for any room, if you guys still remember our office conference rooms, we had Andhra, Maharashtra, Goa, all of those rooms will have a mailbox assigned to it. For example, Goa at cisco.com, andhra@cisco.com, damanju@cisco.com. Okay, so those mailboxes are configured and those are hosted or saved on your Exchange server, and this service is responsible for it. When you do all your bookings from Outlook, and you even for this conference that we just book that we are a part of right now, if you want anyone to be a part of this conference from any of the conference room, you require to have a mailbox to save it. Okay, let me repeat that again. So if you want someone from any room to join this conference, someone from any of the conference room to join this conference, this meeting, we will probably require to book an Outlook meeting and include go@cisco.com inside it. That is taken care by this mailbox server. It ensures that all of that mailboxes are in a healthy state, and all of the information which is getting stored will be taken care by this. Second thing is client access server. This takes care of the connectivity between your Outlook and the backend services that we have on the mailboxes. This would be important. This is nothing but basically when you set up your TMS and you integrate it to Exchange, all the communication that happens between TMS and your Exchange would be with the help of this server, this client access. This provides connectivity between your TMS and Exchange and further Exchange to Outlook. When we see some problems, some communication issues between TMS to this server, we always ask customer to try using a different CAS server if they have any. Customer might have probably a cluster of Exchange server. So that cluster of Exchange server might have a different IP address for a different region. Example, a user in Singapore is trying to book a conference and that does not work. They might have a local CAS server, this client access server in Singapore. We can ask customer to use a different CAS server and check our connectivity to TMS from there. Probably one CAS server is down, a different CAS server might be in a working state for them. Okay, so similar to these, there are some other options. You need not to go much in detail on this side. You may not even require it in TMS, but yeah, this is something I've added just for you to just go through it if in case you require to. Otherwise, these services are not for us. We just have certain. I'll say these two services that you will see in your log events also. Let's see next. So yeah, .NET already covered. Versions of .NET you have to keep in mind. IIS is something we already discussed. There is an extension called TMSPE. Let's cover it later on. So we'll hold on this part. So TMSPE is an extension which does additional job what TMS does. You can install this on top of TMS, and it adds some new features to it. It's a plugin for TMS application. Any question, guys, so far? Any doubts? Anything you have in mind? Please feel free to ask me. This is the right time.
Hey, Amrinder, just wanted to confirm one thing. When you discussed about IIS, IIS is installed on customer's environment, right? And they must be hosting several web pages or websites on it.
Mm-hmm.
Or will it be specific to just the TMS?
Yeah, so good question. Sorry. Yeah, so her question is when you work on a customer environment, you log into this just a second. So you log into IIS and you come here. If you see multiple websites in here, okay, so this is one dedicated website for TMS. you may see some different websites in here. Okay, we do not support that sort of deployment in our case. When you see multiple deployment, it means they already have a customization in place. They are not using this Windows server dedicated for TMS. So we'll ask them to set up, either reset up your IIS or host our TMS on a different Windows server itself. We would not let them use an IIS which already have a set of default websites in place, because it will mess up certain configurations in it.
All right. So
So
IIS server should be dedicated to TMS only for
it should be
things
dedicated
to
to
work.
TMS. Yes.
Okay.
Because
Got
the reason is when you install TMS, it install IIS also. During that IIS installation, it will do a lot of configuration changes to different authentication or different things that we have in here. If you have multiple websites, we may have different sort of configurations for different websites. So that's why we do not let customer use this Windows server for any other purpose apart from TMS or Sql Max. You can install Sql as well along with TMS. Apart from these two things, nothing else should be there.
Got it. Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah. Do not let customer use this for AD installation, for DNS. It will work, but we do not let customer do it. We ask customer to use a dedicated server just for TMS. That's it.
Sure.
All right. So you install TMS. There will be a set of services which will get installed along with it. Probably let me show you the TMS installer first. Let me show you what all things you will see when you set it up. That might clear some of your doubts. So go through the install guide completely, end to end one. It will clear all your doubts that you have regarding TMS for the installation and other purposes. So you download TMS setup file from cisco.com. It will be an exe file, basically a zip file. Once you unzip it, it comes with two setup files inside it, or you can say one exe file. When you open it, these are the two options you will see. You can choose if you just want to install TMS exe file, or you want the log collector file to be installed along with it. Even if you skip log collector, you can still install TMS. That's not a problem. Or vice versa. If you have TMS already in place, you just want log collector installed because they don't have log collector install on it initially. You can just check this and install it. So log in past we had to manually enable certain debugs. We had to manually log into certain files to enable debugs inside it. Now we have made it easy. The same purpose can be, the same work can be done by this utility. I'll tell you both options. If one doesn't work, you can always do a manual effort to do the same. So you click next to the screen. Inside C drive, users, whichever user you are logged in with, administrator or maybe their domain account, then app data, local, temporary folder. Inside that temporary folder, exe file will copy the actual setup file before it starts installing it. Okay, this is nothing new. It's same for any of the Windows application you install. So basically, a temp file is created inside the temp folder on the user side, and then you will be prompted to the next screen, which looks like this. Okay, you click on next. This is the place where .NET will be validated by TMS. If the .NET version doesn't match to what we have in in the install guide, it will throw an error saying that the .NET is not installed or it is not correct. The information may not be accurate. It may just say that the .NET is not installed. If this exe file cannot read the version of .NET correctly, it may just throw that error also. Or it may just say that it requires .NET 4.8. Okay, so don't go with just with the error message. You might have to do some research, look for the guide, check out the version and compare it. You click next, accept the term and agreements, and then you'll see this screen. This is the screen where you integrate this application with the database, with your SQL Server. Okay, so you inform or you add your SQL information in here along with your SQL user account so that this setup file can go ahead and create a database file in there. So once installation is completed, whatever information you require to add on to TMS should get sent out using this application. You require to have an account in here. Right now you see SA, so this is system admin account. You can have other accounts as well. Most of the people or most of the customer won't have this account in their environment. Their SQL admin won't let them use SA. This is a system admin account. This is the default account which SQL creates, or it's a kind of super user account that they have. They won't share this with normal users who are managing TMS. There will be new users that will be created by admin. We have two types of database roles that we allow. Okay, so this is SA, system admin. This user is a SQL user. If we are not talking about TMS users here, this is a user on SQL side. We are trying to integrate this app to SQL. Okay, so that's a role or a right that we have on SQL side, which is system admin SA. If customer don't have the same name, he might probably have a different account. That account needs to have DB creator permission. So there's a permission level which required on SQL side, which we call as DB creator. Our exe file, when we click next, is going to create a database on SQL. So we need to have at least DB creator permission. Anything higher than that is acceptable, but it needs to have a DB creator permission on SQL. This user that you put in here should be able to create a database on SQL site. This thing is important. You'll see a lot of problems when customer perform new installation. Installation will fail saying that this account does not have the right permission. So a minimum of DB creator permission they need to have if they want to proceed ahead and create a database on SQL site. The next problem that might arise is customer says their DB admin cannot allow a DB owner permission, a DB creator permission. There will be certain security measures. Their IT may not allow them to have a DB creator permissions in their SQL site. For such problems, we can ask them to at least create a database yourself. We were talking about that. Let me show you what we are talking about here. Let's go back. This was a snapshot of all the database, and we are talking about Tms database, this one. When we start the setup file, when we start TMS installation and we click next and put in your SQL information, you put in this server name that I am trying to create a database here. This database will be created as soon as you click next on TMS exe file on the other side. Okay, the other screenshot that I showed you. Once you click next on that screen, next from here, that database is going to get created with the name Tms here. Now, in order to create this database, the user which we are defining in the setup file, the user we are setting up here it needs to have certain permissions so that it has the correct rights to create that database with the name Tms Ng. We should be able to create this database. Yeah. So how it will create the database is based on the rights it has on this SQL Server. It could be either DB creator. When you say DB creator, it means this user that you define here would be able to create database. That's why it's called DB creator. Or we can have a DB owner permission, DB owner, DBO. In that case, you have to ask customer to go ahead and create the database yourself first. We'll ask customer to manually create just a dummy database with the name Tms Ng. Since you cannot allow DB creator permission, our application would not be able to create this file. You create it yourself. But at least give it DB owner permission. The user that you define on the exe file should have an owner permission to this. So this should be ready before you start the installation in that case. Any doubt on this side? This is very important. When you perform installation, this will create a lot of trouble for you guys if you don't understand this. No questions? Okay, very good. So you put in that database username here and click next. On the next screen, it will ask you for release keys. It will ask you for the option keys here. Okay, so most of you guys are already working on expressways, on other applications, conductor and everything. The mechanism how expressway works as a VM and how TMS works as a VM is different. On expressways, based on the MAC address, whenever you do or whenever you install a new VM, it creates a serial number of TMS on its own. If you just reload a new VM, it will have a different serial number. In TMS, we do not have any serial number for our product. Okay. We do not let this application create a dummy serial number. We do not do that. Here, we ask customer to buy this product from us. We will send them the release key and the option keys. That release key would create the serial number on the setup file. Okay, so when you install TMS for the first time, there will be no serial number on the device itself. So if you go to your TMS, if you set it up for the first time, there will be no serial number on the right hand bottom corner. So when you install it, there will be no serial number here. It will show trial in here. You have to install the release key in order to get the right serial number in place in here. Now, you might have a question, how do we get a release key when you don't have a serial number here? How do we get it? The answer here would be when customer purchase this application, when they subscribe, they get this package, they will get a welcome letter. Along with that, they will have a sales order number. In that sales order number, the serial number would be mentioned. Sometimes you will see some customers raising a case with licensing, asking them that this interface shows trial. They need a full version, and the licensing team would reach out to us, asking us to create a serial number so that they can generate the release key for them. Here, it works the other way around. We need to have the release key in order to get the serial number updated in here. And any question on this, guys? I can answer that right away. No questions? Okay, we'll move on then. So you add all the option keys in here. If you have no option keys with you, no release key, you can still go with the trial version. Just click next from here without entering anything. You will still get your TMS installed without any license in place. It will let you use your TMS with a maximum of 3 endpoints or maybe 3 managed devices. You can have 3 devices added to it. The rest of the functionalities will work. It's just that you won't have a serial number. Trial mode will let you use 3 devices at a time. And you click next from there. It asks you for the ISDN or IP zone you are a part of. Probably later on we will discuss this in detail. It's not that much important, but basically this name and this region can be used for advanced configurations, wherein if you have a set of devices located in US, another set of devices located in APAC, another set of devices in EMEA, you can define different multiple regions in TMS. And when you add those devices from US, you can choose one region for all of them. It means you are just bifurcating or differentiating different devices based on the region. Region is nothing but just a name, but when you differentiate those with one region, that region will help you to choose a local MCU or a local CMS or a local bridge for bookings. So if you're doing a booking for all users which are located in US, if you define region to all the devices, including CMS also, TMS, when it does the booking, it will choose a US TMS for them, so that their media traffic would not go to APAC or Europe. Okay, so it will be a local CMS for them that will be picked up. So that's the feature. Not many people use it. Some people don't have that sort of complex configuration. So yeah, you can skip that since it's the initial stage for you guys. You click next. One thing that they have not shown in here is the IS config. When you click next from this screen, the moment you click next, TMS starts installing application and it starts adding the IIS configurations in the setup file. It will say configuring IIS. We need to make sure IIS is not installed. If it is a clean installation, remote desktop to TMS server, cross-check, they should not have nothing coming up when they do IIS search. Okay, this should not be installed. If it is installed, go to this part, go to Server Manager, and then search for IIS. If it is there, simply go ahead and remove it. That's the best way to troubleshoot all issues related to IIS. So you can go to add or remove or whichever option you have based on different versions of Windows. You can simply remove this from the Windows server, install TMS, that will reinstall or that will install IIS for them. If customer says I've done some configurations and looks like the IIS is corrupted, they are seeing some error message, or customer says my web page does not work, when and you went on call with them, search or just look for just the IP address and it's not loading up the IIS page. If you're not landing on this page, IIS, it means your request is either not hitting the Windows server or you are not able to reach to this service on the Windows side. Something is wrong with this service, right? So if you are accessing TMS, if nothing comes up, either your laptop is not reachable to this IP address or to the Windows server, or this service itself is not working. Now, how would you isolate this? You can probably go to remote desktop, type in the same IP address in the remote desktop, because now within that Windows server, you are accessing the IIS service. You search here. If this thing is coming up, it means there's some network problem from his laptop. They are not able to access the Windows Server IIS service. It's outside of TMS, not our problem. until they are accessing /TMS, they have to handle requests themselves. All of these would be taken care by them. This is not our product. IS is not our application. Windows is not our site. They will take care of it. When we do /TMS and you're seeing some errors on that screen, that's when our troubleshooting scope will come into picture. Okay, so just keep this in mind when you troubleshoot. Do not just go with the flow. Just try to understand what the problem is, and then, because when you start troubleshooting such issues wherein TMS is not even in the picture, we are setting a wrong expectation, and when it's a third-party product, there's a chance that we will be spending more time troubleshooting it because we are not familiarized with it, and yeah, may end up with escalations for no point. So yeah, that's one step you should always try. So whenever IS looks problematic, you think some problem with the IS is there, you need to make sure you reload the IS configuration. This is a point where the IS will get reinstalled. Right after this, IS will get installed and then the application will get installed. Now, in order to add certificates to it, it's a Windows server. So you can just create a CSR from IS itself. So IS is an important thing. You have to spend some time understanding it. If I go to this part, I just go to main page of IS. We should have something called certificates in here. Server certificate. Here you can create a CSR for this server. You can also create a self-signed certificate also. Get that certificate signed, and upon completion, once you get the certificate, you can upload it here. Okay, I have so many certificates in here. Look at this. Now, which one to choose? These are the server certificates I'm talking about. Like you have on Expressway, you have server certificate. I have all of these. Now, which one to choose for TMS? You can always just go here. Go to default website. My request is coming all the way here. And here I have something called bindings. Here I define that for my website, what all services should be on. Do I need HTTP for my TMS? I say yes, I have defined it. If I remove it, I'm removing binding for port 80. It means if I try to access HTTP:// IP address, my TMS won't be reachable. If I take this off, TMS and TMS over HTTP and HTTPS won't work. Yeah, if talking about the certificates, you click on 443 and here you choose the certificate you want. Okay, so you can choose the certificate, click OK. Whenever you do any changes, you require to restart the IS. You can do it from here. Okay, any certificate change, any configuration change, any sort of changes that you make, restart the IS, then only we create the problem if you need to do it. Okay, are we good at this? Any questions, anything you have? Just let me know. Okay, great. So this is one place.
Amrinder, I have a question.
Yeah.
How do we get to know that the certificates have been expired?
Okay.
I mean, where can we see that?
So you go to bindings. One way is you go back to that server certificate option, or you click on view here.
Okay. Oh, okay. Got it.
Yeah, you choose your certificate you want to validate and just click on view. That's one way.
Okay, understood. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, rest all will be similar to how we do it for other stuff. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, next. So this section is when you install the certificate, when you install your TMS. During the installation, this pop-up will appear and it let you choose any certificate you want. If you don't have any certificate handy, you can just click on create. This creates a self-signed certificate on TMS. Will at least let you run your TMS fine. There will be an alert when you access web page. but still your TMS would be reachable. Later on, whenever you have time or whenever you get your certificate signed, you can come back to that IS screen which I showed you earlier. Go here, server certificate, and either you can generate a CSR or upload in here. Once you upload here, then only you go to default website, because we are binding a certificate here. When you bind it, you need to have your certificate uploaded first. Then only you will see one of those certificates in the list. Okay, then you choose it, click OK, then restart your IIS, and then try to access the web page. That will be the process that will follow. So you click next from this and finish. Once you finish, your web page should be up. Try to access your web page and it should be up and running. Once you finish this, there will be another pop-up window that will appear, which is your log collector. Yeah, this is just an exe file. Click hitting next, next, next. This let you create debug files. If you need to enable debugs for any of the service, this tool will help you out. Probably at the end of the last session on Friday, we'll discuss about it, how you do it, what's the role of it. But basically, in short, it is if you want debugs for any of your TMS service, you require to have this tool. Otherwise, you have to do a manual effort, which is a little bit tough. You have to do a lot of things or manipulate a lot of things to do it. So that's all about installation. One thing which I missed here is when you install TMS, just because before the certificate signing, there will be a few more things that will happen. That is, it will create certain services for different roles that TMS does. There are a set of services which TMS will be installing on the Windows. Okay, so example, when you set up your expressways, it runs on Linux. There are certain services it runs in the background. It will have an Apache server. It will have a database server. Different services in the backend that perform different functions for that server to work. Similarly, in our case, since you install on Windows, there will be a set of services that TMS will install on the Windows side. Okay, so there will be a set of services which TMS will be installing it. I just lost. I think it should be somewhere here. Here. Okay. So there are a set of services. This is not clear. Let me remote desktop and show you all. So I'm into remote desktop. I go to search, type services.msc. You will see this. So this will show you a set of services. Search for letter T, as in Tango. You will see a list of TMS services here. Okay. Each of these services has a different role to play. It's not mandatory that all the services should be up. If I just disable SNMP service, I'm just disabling SNMP on my TMS side. That does not mean that my TMS will stop working. It's just that the SNMP would not be functional on the TMS side. Provision extension. If customer says I'm not using provision extension, probably I can stop this one also. There'll be no impact as such on this. Right. The important things that come in picture are like this: database scanner. This is the service that takes care of all the APIs, all the interaction which happens between TMS as an app and SQL database in the backend. So if you're not able to see any configuration, when I say not able to see any configuration, you mean you're trying to access your TMS web page and there are some error messages, some SQL related errors. All of that all of those events are handled by this service in the backend. This service takes care of all the API transactions to and fro. Any of those errors that appears would be listed by this service. Okay, so TMS when talks to SQL, TMS when talks to CUCM, when any AXL queries are exchanged between TMS and CUCM for all the endpoints that are there on CUCM, all of those events are captured by this service. Okay, so if one of the device from CUCM is not coming up correctly on TMS, CUCM is not showing correct status, this and that, all of that thing would be handled by this service. Okay, you have to probably check this service, make sure this service is on. If you turn this off, I think your TMS itself won't work. But yeah, you have to keep an eye on this service for any of those database related problems. Live service. This service, we'll be covering this in detail later on. But yeah, these are the services. Basically, live service is the one that that takes care of the bookings. Any of the live events, for example, if you start a meeting has started, TMS takes care of all the participants which have added. If any of those participants disconnects, TMS rejoin that device. It makes sure your booking is running till the end time that you define. All of those events would be your live service event. Okay. TMS PLCM. This PLCM means Polycom Directed Service. If you have Polycom endpoint and you want to show Polycom endpoint, show phone book to it, this will be your service for it. Scheduler service. If you want to do any bookings and those bookings are not going through, there are some problems with the booking itself, this will be your service. So these are the main services we have. Database, live, scheduler are most common. Diagnostic is the one that takes care of all the alerts and all the information that you see related to any of the reachability or any sort of other errors. So this will be helpful to diagnose those. So any questions on this, guys? So whenever you install or upgrade your TMS, these are the set of services that will be there for sure. And these should be set to running and automatic. If you set this to manual, it means at the next reboot, these won't get started on its own. If you stop all of these services, your web page won't work. Yeah, so some of the things that might help you troubleshoot here. Any question, guys? No questions? All right. Now let's talk about the deployment types that we have. We have large, basically a regular and a large setup types that we have. So just have a look on this. Anything more than 20 endpoints added to TMS are considered as regular deployment. Anything more than 5,000 is considered large. When we say regular and large, it means there is a set of RAM, hard drive, your processor requirement based on what deployment type you have. So probably you have to configure your setup accordingly. Even if you have 5,000 and you choose a regular deployment with less RAM, it will still work. It's not that it won't work, but yeah, since you have so many endpoints, utilization would be high. And if you choose less RAM, less CPU, it may work slower. That will be the only impact. So your performance will be impacted. That will be the only difference if we don't keep an eye on the type of deployments we have. So a large deployment would require external Sql Server, external Tms server. This XE is a different plugin. We'll be discussing it later on. It's probably one separate day for this one. But based on what setup you have, the regular or large, you have to decide where you would install your component. If it is a regular one, you can have this much space disk space, memory, and CPU. If you want to set up SQL on top of this, you might have to increase the disk space a little bit, might have to increase a little bit of CPU cores also. That is there in the install guide. So yeah, next is the list of ports that are used by TMS. So how TMS communicates? Life would be a little easy here when we talk about TMS interaction with other services. We don't have too many ports. The list you see are for different services, but mainly TMS will talk over HTTP and HTTPS. That these are the main two ports that it will use. For any web access, TMS communication to TMS XE, all of that would be done over port 80 and 443. Okay. If they have integration to LDAP, yeah, that has a dedicated port, fixed port by default. You can change it, but 80 and 443 would be the most common. When you add your endpoints to TMS, it will use 443 by default. Fallback port would be 80 always. Adding CMS, adding VCS to TMS, they'll all use 443 for communication. So make sure your TMS can talk to all the managed devices, these endpoints, TMS, TMS over 443. If you're trying to add a device and you're not able to access it, it says no HTTP response. One easy way to troubleshoot is you can remote desktop to your TMS server. Okay, so how you troubleshoot such issues are simply open a browser, access that endpoint from a browser inside TMS. If your endpoint is reachable, it means you have a reachability between your Windows server to the device that you're trying to add. It's between your application and the endpoint which is not able to add. Okay, easy way to isolate is you have TMS Windows server. You need to ensure that the reachability to Windows server is there for any sort of problem. Right, your communication fails between CUCM and TMS more often. Probably start a ping from TMS, or just keep refreshing your CUCM page from TMS web server here, and check out if it fails here. If it is fail outside of TMS, you can simply ask them to check their Windows side or the network side why it's failing. Those issues we would not entertain. Yeah, because our operating system is not a Cisco product. It's something outside of it. You will see most of the problems that will be raised by antivirus, some Windows updates, some group policies introduced by their IT team. All of those things create a lot of problem, and it becomes hard to handle when you work on cases. So yeah, keep the expectation right when you work on these. Otherwise, yeah, your life would be a little difficult when you work on TMS. Okay, so yeah, this is what we discussed earlier. So when you install TMS, this is what it will show you as trial. Okay, so TMS is show as trial mode by default. Once you install it, this is the format we have for TMS serial number 80A or B. A is for VM, B was for application. So we used to have an appliance version of TMS also, like VCS, MCUs, pizza box we used to have in past. TMS was also an appliance server in past. Now it's all VM. So serial number starts with 80A followed by a unique code like this. You can check their sales order number on our order tool. You should be able to find the serial number there also, that what serial number have been assigned to them. Share that serial number to the licensing team if they need to. The customer will receive a PAK number. They will link this serial number with the PAK key, which will help them generate the required licenses. This is all done by licensing team, but this is information purpose, that if you if someone asks you how to find serial number, it will be based on the sales order. Our application won't create it. It's the trial mode that it creates by default. Now, release key format looks like this. Serial number, followed by version, followed by the unique code. If it is for version 14, it will be this -14 - whatever code it has. That will be different from this one. Yeah, so based on this value, you will be able to understand for which version it is, for which serial number of TMS it is. Now I have example, I installed 3 TMS in my setup. If I just use the same serial number on 3 TMS, it will still work. I can have same set of license, same set of serial number on all 3 TMS that will work fine. Okay, that's the beauty of it. Basically, it accepts any serial number. In our labs, I'm not sure if you guys have worked or you guys have attended previous trainings that I've given. I've shared some of the old release keys to some of the guys. We all have same serial number on TMS. Okay, so customers still have an option to use the same serial number in case something goes wrong. In Expressways, you have to reach out to licensing to move license from one old serial number to new one. That's not required here. They can simply deploy a new VM or new Windows server, and on that you can just use the existing license. It will work. Any question on licensing, guys? Anything? No questions? Okay, let's talk about the next thing, which will be licenses. So probably this will be the last topic because we have covered a lot of things, and I want you guys to set up labs first before we move ahead. So option keys, first one is system key. The system means how many systems would you be able to add. Okay, so there's a code to it. Whatever code you define, like 25 and then 100 makes it 125. You can have 125 systems added to it. When I say systems, I mean it's the total number of managed devices that you can add on TMS. Okay, how many devices would you be able to add in TMS? It's not just endpoints we are talking about. We are talking about Cisco managed devices. Whatever we can add in TMS. See, I disabled port 80 earlier. That's why it says 404 not found now. So whichever device I add in TMS, that is endpoint, CMS, VCS, TPS, all of these devices will consume 1 license each. So if I have 10 license and I have 1 CUCM, 1 Expressway, 1 CMS, 3, and if I have 7 endpoints, I can add it, makes it 10. To add the 11th one, it won't let me add it. I have to get another license from Cisco in order to add that device. Otherwise, I won't be able to manage that device. That is called Cisco TMS managed devices, and you require to have this license. Okay. Second one is that's same thing basically. Just add more info. The second one would be Tms Integration, which is this one, extension for Microsoft Exchange. This has a limit of 25. So in past, not many users used to have TMS XE in their deployment. So what they used to do was they used to just buy a pair of these. Like if they just need 25, they won't have many endpoints. They will just buy this one, which will be less costly. The role of this license is it let you add TMS XE, or it let in TMS XE to integrate to TMS, and that integration can allow 25 systems on TMS XE side. Okay, 1 minute, guys. Just 1 minute. Okay, so let me repeat that again. Probably I'll create a diagram here for it. Understand? So I have TMS here. This is my application. I have installed TMS XE. This is another application. We'll talk about this later on. This is TMS XE. With that TMS XE license and the value of 25, I can add up to 25 systems here. Those 25 systems can be integrated further to Exchange. Okay, I can have Exchange server set up. We can use those 25 systems to do booking from Outlook. The handwriting is very bad. Let me just. So I have my Outlook here. I have my Outlook on the extreme right side where it says sample text. It talks to Exchange. Exchange will further talk to our TMS XE, and we can have up to 25 systems which are on TMS bookable from Outlook. Okay, if you think from the other side, from Outlook, you get a provision to book 25 systems from TMS XE, which can be sent further to TMS. Any questions on this, guys? Let me know if you guys don't understand it. I'll repeat again what I just said.
Yes, can you please repeat?
Okay, sure. So this license means when you set up your TMS XE, it's a different server or a different application you install on a different Windows server, maybe on the same TMS also. When you open up this TMS application, this application has a section wherein you define what all systems would you like to add here on this app, which will be bookable from Outlook. If you have Outlook in place, how many systems or what all system would you like to be booked in your meeting? That limit is set to 25. If you want to add more than 25, you need to buy more licenses for it. So that TMS XE license, which we are discussing here, is this license, this one. Yeah, is that clear? We will be discussing this later on once I show you TMS XE. So right now, just an overview that basically when you book a meeting from Outlook, this license has a limit of adding 25 systems, not just for one meeting, but adding those devices on Outlook or on TMS XE here. You cannot add more than 25 here in the list. When you add more license on TMS side, then only it will let you add more devices, so that when you book meetings, it should get replicated on TMS. That's all about it.
Okay.
Another option you have is application integration. So these are same thing. This one and this one are quite similar. This one gives a limitation of 25 systems. Those who just want a full version of TMS XE integration, they will just buy this license. What this means is, no matter how many license that you add on, or how many rooms that you add on TMS XE here in the list, all will be allowed to do the booking on TMS side. There'll be no restrictions. So it's basically a full version of TMS XE license that we have. That will be the only difference between TMS XE integration and application integration. We are basically integrating the entire application with TMS XE. Here you will see both of those. So someone might have purchased 25 register system book license initially. Later on, maybe they introduced maybe 100 more devices. Now they have to buy a set of 3 more license with 25, 25, 25. So instead of that, probably they might have to pay $100 more and buy a complete license, which has no limitation. You can just add that license, and no matter how many rooms you will be adding in future, those will have no restriction on it. So it's basically a full version of it. It's same thing. All right. Another one is booking integration. Now, this license is required for those users who do not want to use Outlook, who do not want to use Exchange, who do not want to use TMS for bookings. Okay, so there will be a chance wherein customer do not want to use our TMS as a front end or our TMS GUI because they don't like it, or they just want their customization, their customized side of TMS. That is also possible. Okay, so on TMS, if you go here, and let me just show you the booking page first, what that booking page is. So whenever a user have to do a booking, he has to go to booking and then this conference stream. Okay, so on this page, if any user has to do the booking, he has to come to this screen, modify certain parameters, add the units they want to book, and click save. This is our TMS interface. Now, there are customers who do not want to look or use this interface. They just want to use the backend code and create their own front-end interface. Okay, there are customers who do that. So for them, we have our booking API, we have our booking code. We can share the code file with them. They can create their own front end wherein they will have their own interface. In the backend, they will use our API, and those APIs will communicate to TMS. Okay, so basically using a third-party app, using our booking APIs, our code, we can send APIs to do the booking, and TMS will do the booking. For that, you require to have a booking API license if you're using a third-party app to do the same. Any questions on this part? All right. So the next one would be network integration. This is for unmanaged bridges. Some people, this is not used nowadays much, but some people used to have Polycom bridges. They used to have Red Vision. This is something Cisco acquired some time in past. Some of the old Cisco Telepresence solutions. For those, we require to have network integration, but yeah, rarely you'll see anyone having this one. There was something called analytic extension in past. This was another service TMS used to provide, which used to analyze customer deployment, customer infrastructure, and create some reports for the management side. This is out of support years ago. So you would not see any case. Application is not even there, so we won't be discussing. But yeah, this option was there in past. Some people used to have it. And the last one is provisioning extension. Some people still use it. That Jabber movie thing that we talk about, soft client, this is the main reason why people used to have it. We used to have CMR hybrid setups where people used to create some rooms on conductor, some CMR rooms on conductor. To create those rooms on conductor, you need to have provisioning extension in place. So this movie is out of support, but if someone still wants to use CMR hybrid setup, wherein they want to create some CMR rooms on conductor, this service is required. But this license is only required when you use Jabber movie. Okay, so whenever someone use Jabber movie and they log in, that's when this provisioning extension is required. Or you have any Jabber video or any endpoint provisioned to TMS using provisioning extension, not just standard provisioning. We are talking about provisioning extension as a service, wherein units are provisioned to TMS, and we are sending configuration files to TMS, to endpoints from TMS side that requires this provisioning extension license. Apart from that, mainly you will have this license in most customer environment and this one. These are the two most common license that you would see. Rest all can be ignored. You will rarely see anyone using the rest of the license.